Hello, my name is Wade Black, and today I'm going to be talking about training quality assurance. TQA is a program designed to help trainers reach their goals. The focus of TQA is tracking the training trifecta, which is temperament, foundation, and task completion. TQA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization focused on working with experts in the equine and ranching industry to set industry quality standards and certification in training and selling horses to the public, as well as working on ranches where horsemanship, stockmanship, and roping skills are required. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about really the backbone of the program, which is the foundation for perfection. And this was really developed at Montana State University. I took 12 head of horses and I grained part of them, and then I didn't grain part of them, and I measured the effects of increase in energy during the early stages of training. And really what I tried to do was to bring a scientific component to everything I thought I saw my dad and grandpa do growing up. I learned a lot from the study. I don't really have time to go into everything as far as what the study proved, but one of the things I really took away was bringing a scientific component to training horses. And then I took that into my own horse training business, which is Training for the Cross LLC. And as the earlier video said, I expanded that to one point over having 35 outside horses and 4 to 5 different riding employees. And that's really where I took the score sheets for my masters to develop a tracking system to track the horses to make sure that they were where I wanted them to be, where I wasn't riding every horse. I wanted to keep training quality, and that was really the birth of what I call TQA, or training quality assurance. And then after, as that video said, Sonny Hansen passed away, and they hired me to take over the equine program at TVCC. So that's really where I fine-tuned the TQA curriculum in an educational setting. And I've been teaching there for 9 years now, and I just continue to improve on it. And then also with Oregon State, we took some of the research that I did with MSU and we applied it to roping cows, branding calves. We did 4 different constraint methods. We did one where we ran them through the calf table. We did one that was a heel and drag with all the moms off the babies. And then we did one where we head and heeled them with the moms and babies off separated. And then the last one, we head and heeled them with the mom still on, and we measured the effects of stress on the various branding methods. And so that was a very interesting study too. That study really showed that there was twice as much stress whenever you take the babies away from the moms. And so really the foundation for perfection, what I teach is that there's 3 causes of resistance. And as I go through this, I'm primarily going to talk about in relation to horses. But like I said, I've applied this in working with horses, cows, dogs, and people, and all these same principles apply. So the 3 causes of resistance is a lack of communication, fear, and resentment. And the 5 things to eliminate resistance is willing submission, good communication, a balanced life to direction ratio, solid foundation of maneuvers, and stages of training maturity. So lack of communication is a big one, and that's the big cause of resistance. Whenever there's a lack of communication, the animals basically get pushed into 2 different forms of self-preservation, which is either fear or resentment. And so that's a huge part of the program, is helping people communicate with their horses, helping people communicate with their cows, their dog, employees, just the whole family employee atmosphere. So whenever there's a lack of communication, the horse or the person needs more time, patience, and teaching. We need to slow down and try to communicate better. With any 2 animals, whenever clear communication and understanding is lost, resistance begins to surface. If enough self-preservation and a lack of communication is present, any animal will begin to operate in resentment. The next one is fear. So this is due to a lack of confidence. And once again, we need to slow down and try to communicate better what we want. This is really important when we're working with horses and cows, because they're prey animals. So anything that they don't have confidence in, we'll talk about that, they're going to push them into that self-preservation. Whenever an animal loses confidence, self-preservation, fight, flight, or freeze kicks in. Once the animal's self-preservation begins to kick in, the animal's reasoning ability begins to decline. It is important to recognize this and use pressure and relief appropriately and working with all creatures, whether it's horses, cows, horses, cows, dogs, kids, and especially wives. Okay. Resentment due to unwilling submission. When communication is lost, self-preservation kicks in. Any animal begin to operate in resentment. This can range anywhere from being numb, resentful, or wanting to physically or verbally, this would be in people, fight off any and all direction being suggested. So once again, lack of communication puts them in two different forms of self-preservation, fear or resentment. Then there's 5 things to eliminate resistance that I teach: willing submission, good communication, a balanced life to direction ratio, solid foundation of maneuvers, and stages of training maturity. So my definition of willing submission is after initial cue, the horse does the job on a loose rein and with no leg pressure. It's the horse's idea. That's the big key there. If it's their idea, we shouldn't have to drive them to do it. So the best way to achieve willing submission with people and with animals is through understanding their driving factors and how to use pressure and relief effectively. And so this was a big part of my master's, is the driving factors, what's going on the inside of that horse. Okay. Good communication, learning to read, feel, and understand what the person or animal is saying in response to your request. Communication involves 2 individuals. So what is the person saying? What is the horse saying? A lot of times we're really good at telling the horse what we want or trying to force a cow to do what we want, but it's a 2-way conversation. So when we ask them to do something, especially if there's fear or resentment in there, we need to try to present it in a way that it makes sense to the horse or the cow, or as parents working with kids, with the kids as well. We communicate through feel, timing, and balance, and through their driving factors. The driving factors, there's 3 primary: self-preservation, comfort, companionship. The 2 underlining is confidence and energy, and the 1 variable is hormones. And so that was really the huge part of my program, is we increased the energy through the form of grain dietary energy, and then we measured the effects of that, how that increased self-preservation and really took longer to accomplish the same thing while training them. And so here's a little graph that my dad and Steve Peters have done on explaining the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. So at the top of the graph there, you can see the sympathetic nervous system. At the bottom of the graph, you can see the parasympathetic nervous system. So when they're in their when animals in their parasympathetic nervous system, they'll be experiencing confidence. They'll be experiencing comfort and companionship somewhere. Anyway, and as say you go to start them, something happens, they don't have confidence. They work their way up the pyramid depending on how much pressure and how much fear is in that horse. So you can see as you work their way up there on the left side of the graph, they're sleeping, grazing, kind of the optimal learning comes in there when they're alert, concerned, they're aware. And then clear up at the top of the graph there is fight or flight, where they don't have confidence. They're in their sympathetic nervous system. And so you can see as they work their way up the pyramid, at the top there, they'll have high adrenaline and high stress. So what's interesting here is, and I'm going to talk more about this as I go to work a horse in this talk, but we'll put pressure on a horse. It pushes them from their parasympathetic to their sympathetic nervous system. And when an animal does that, they'll clench their jaw. From their parasympathetic to their sympathetic nervous system, they'll get tight. When they come back and they relax, and they come from their sympathetic to their parasympathetic nervous system, they relax their jaw. And when they do that, when they relax their jaw, they produce saliva. And when they do that, they lick their lips. And so I grew up a lot training horses where you put a little pressure and then you give them time to learn. And when they lick their lips, you give them relief. Well, what happens there is they get a chemical called dopamine. Okay, it's a feel-good chemical. And so that's really the key to understanding pressure and relief effectively. That's one thing my dad used to say all the time, is it takes pressure for relief to be effective and relief for pressure to be effective. And so that's a key in training horses and working with cows. And really, I think of that a lot when I'm teaching students and even working with my own kids to make sure that the kids are getting that dopamine. And I'll talk more about, how that sympathetic nervous system will be different in working with people than working with animals. You can see on the other graph over here, when we push them up the pyramid in an animal, a person, anyone doesn't have confidence, there's 2 different ways they can come down the pyramid. They could come down and get the relief, if it's a kid, they can win. It can be a good experience, or you can put a kid on a horse. They can get scared. They can get bucked off. It could be a horrible experience. Then there's really the dark side, where they come down the wrong side of the pyramid. They don't get the dopamine. They don't get that feel-good chemical, and it can really be a bad experience. And that's true, like I said, in working with horses or cows or dogs or people, where they can be resentful, tolerant, submissive, traumatized, escaping. It can just be a bad experience. And so the other thing, you can see cortisol there. The prolonged periods of stress cause cortisol, which is unhealthy. And that's, like I said, again, working with horses, cows, dogs, and people to not have those prolonged periods of stress. So as I continue here, the next thing is a balanced life to direction ratio. The balanced life to direction ratio is defined as the ratio is determined by the speed which we can willingly bring the life up and willingly direct it on a set line, straight or curved, without losing direction. And again, this is important in horses, cows, dogs, and people. I think about this a lot when I'm working with kids, that life, that ambition, and then getting the direction, that balanced life to direction ratio. Life is defined as the ability to move the horse with any given speed at any given time. Direction is defined as when the slack is taken out of the rein, the horse puts the slack back in the rein with suppleness through the pull and the loin. And I'll talk more about that in just a second to truly determine how you have direction, or what I call false direction, where they put the slack back in the rein, but they're not soft through the pull and the loin. The next thing is vertical direction, which is up and down, where they break vertically. And this is the nose should be perpendicular to the ground. So there's 3 signs to identify horizontal direction, and there's more than this, but these are the 3 primary ones that I have kids look out. Number 1 is they break in the pull horizontally. So their hairline should curve between the ears. The nose should be directly underneath the eye. Should not see any white in the eye. It means they should be looking back, not forward. Those are the 3 signs by the loin. The 3 signs by the loin, or their feet, how they move, is the front feet and hind feet travel on the same path made as the nose. The pull and loin should make a perfect C around the rider's leg. Should be able to ride a perfect circle. So a C is half of an O. So that's a big thing, is how to get that nice round suppleness through the pull and the loin is through the vocab word of direction that I teach. Then the next thing is the solid foundation of maneuvers. And I define that as the ability to move the horse's feet in any direction to accomplish any job. Every time I take the slack out of the rein, I'm constantly thinking about what revelation I want through to the feet. And I break it down with kids as it's just these 4 simple revelations. Stage 1 is stopping the inside front foot and moving all the other feet forward around it. This would be like disengaging the hindquarters. Stage 2 is the hindquarters pulling the horse in a reverse motion. And this is really important, that they're pulling with their hind feet instead of pushing with their front feet. When they pull with their hind feet, they round their back and their head comes down. When they push with their front feet, they hollow their back and their head comes up. Stage 3 is lateral movement of the front and hind feet together in a lateral motion. This is for like a side pass or a 2-track. Stage 4 is stopping the inside hind feet and moving all the other feet forward around it. This would be like for a rollback or a spin. And then the last thing I have is understanding the different stages of training maturity. So the first one is focused on setting the foundation. So whenever I go to work a horse the first time, it's all about setting the foundation. It's about teaching my student, even if it's a horse, helping them learn those vocab words. So like horizontal direction, vertical direction in the 4 stages. That would be the first 10, 20 rides, however long that takes to instill that foundation in there. The next is building on the foundation through doing a job. One thing I really think about there is we sacrifice the job, whether you're open a gate, whether you're teaching them to find a line, a curve line, whether you're getting the line out to go away from the barn or track a cow. It's a setting there that I'm not going to put them in high stress. I'm not going to try to get in an alley and sort cows and blow up that foundation. So I'll take as long as it takes for those revelations of stage 1, 2, 3, 4 to learn how to get the revelation through to the feet, sacrifice the job, and have it make sense to the horse. The next one is testing the foundation. Especially part of this program, a huge part of it is training and selling horses to the public. So in a training setting, there's a point there where we need to kind of put some pressure on that horse, test the horse, and really find out if there's any holes, especially if we're training and selling them to the public. So the next one I have is sacrifice the foundation. So here I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'll kind of hustle my reins. I'll kind of ride him around. A lot of inexperienced horse owners kind of ride their horse like a four-wheeler. So I'm going to try to force them and do a few little things there and see if there's any holes there. And when you do that, you know, especially if you're out working cows or doing a job, they'll lose confidence, they'll be unsure, and you'll find the holes basically. And then you need to go back, depending on how much confidence they lost. You know, you might go clear back to setting the foundation again, building the foundation, and then come back and test it again. And that's really the process. We want that good, solid, all-around horse that we can go do anything. And then eventually, after going through those first three kind of over and over again, pretty soon you could get to that last stage, which is using and maintaining the foundation. You know, and that's really where they're ready for the public, where they've been tested, they have the foundation, they've applied it to do job, whether it's in the reining, cow work, whether it's a ranch horse, even a pleasure dude horse. They know their job, and the horse has confidence in doing it. So now we're going to watch a clip. This is a little excerpt from Road to the Horse. This is the third day that I had on this horse, and this is just kind of giving you a picture of how these vocab words tie into actually training a horse. One of the things that I really look for in training a horse is something called dopamine, okay? And that's a chemical that the body produces, okay? And it kind of goes back to what's going on the inside of this horse. And as I grabbed out, I'll ask my last question. I had a bunch of guys come to my booth when I talked a little bit about the science of my research that I did in my research project. Okay, would anyone be okay if I shared a little bit more of the research that I did when I did my master's? That's kind of my last question there. Okay, so every time I take the slack out of the rein, okay, I'm constantly thinking about my master's, what I did in my master's, and I'm constantly thinking about, in training horses, what I call achieving the training trifecta, okay? So the training trifecta is made up of task completion, temperament, and foundation, but not necessarily in that order. The first thing I would be looking for is foundation, okay? And that was really the heart of what I did my master's in, is what is that foundation that we want to instill in our horse to eliminate all the resistance, okay? That was really the focus of the foundation for perfection, is learning to eliminate resistance when doing a job, okay? So some foundational things, and this was stuff that I just watched my dad and my grandpa and them do. So one of that first vocab word would be stopping that inside front foot and walking all the other feet forward around it. I called that stage one. Okay, I want that both ways. I want to cue him up here. Every time I take the slack out of the rein, I'm constantly thinking of a vocab word. So that's stage one. Stopping the inside front foot, moving all the other feet forward around it. Okay. Here's stage two, using the hindquarters to pull that horse in a reverse motion. Okay? Stage three is the front feet and hind feet moving together in a lateral motion, which would be like a side pass. Stage four would be stepping across that inside hind foot. Okay? So those are the 4 stages. Every time I take the slack out of the rein, I am constantly thinking about what foot I want to step. Every time I take the slack out of the rein, I'm thinking, what foot do I want to step? When that foot steps, slack comes back into this rein. I take the slack out, I'm waiting for slack to come back into that rein when his feet do what I want. Every problem I have with this horse comes from the revelations, 4 simple revelations not getting through to the feet. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, those same simple little foundation maneuvers there, okay? The other thing I look for, okay, is suppleness through the pull and the loin. So my definition of that is when I take the slack out of the rein, the horse puts the slack back in the rein with suppleness through the pull and the loin. I'm taking the slack out of the rein, he's putting the slack back in the rein with suppleness through the pull and the loin. I take the slack out of the rein, he's putting the slack back in the rein with suppleness through the pull and the loin. Nice and round through there, okay? So that's kind of the groundwork that I look for in this horse, okay? That would be some of the foundational things that I would be looking for, okay? So some of the vocab words in relation to this would be stage 1, which is stopping the inside front foot, walking all the other feet forward around it. Stage 2, using the hindquarters to pull the horse in a reverse motion, okay? In horizontal direction, which is when I take the slack out of the rein, he puts the slack back in the rein with suppleness through the pull and the loin. So that would be the foundational things that I want to teach this horse.
No different than if I was a coach, okay? Say I help people learn how to rope, I help bronc riders. Okay, if I was going to help a bronc rider, some of the foundational things they'd need to learn to do is lift and charge, okay? If I was helping a team roper, they'd need to learn to lead with their top strand, okay? So those are just, this is my student. Those are just some of the foundational things that this little horse is going to need as our relationship progresses. But then we also have some temperament things, okay? So there's things, and this is what I had score sheets when I did my master's. We had stuff on that temperament side, like self-preservation. So when I did my master's, I had to name all these variables that influence this horse to be able to learn. So like self-preservation was one of them, confidence was one of them, energy was one of them, that was a big part of my master's, sensitivity was one of them, reaction to social separation. So as I was given my master's, I'd give it a number, right? We had to track this, so I'd give it a number. Self-preservation had a number, 1 to 5. Confidence had a number, 1 to 5. Energy had a number, 1 to 5. And also the foundation part had a number. How would I score horizontal direction on a score from 1 to 5? How would I score stage 1 on a score from 1 to 5? And then I also had task completions, okay? Like good to catch, good to stand, good to bridle, lope in a straight line away from the barn, open and close a gate, okay? Roll back, do a reining pattern. That was some of the task completions that I have. So what I teach and kind of what I've took away from my master's is sometimes what we do as horse trainers is we'll sacrifice sometimes a little bit on the foundation to try to accomplish more on the task completion, okay? And so that's something that we all run into as horse trainers, okay? How many guys have ever tried to catch a horse before they're ready to catch? Anybody in here? How many guys ever tried to saddle a horse before they're ready to saddle? Okay, we tried to do task completion before maybe we'd worked on enough foundation things or temperament things. Okay, so it's the same with this horse. Okay, so back to the temperament deal there. Why I picked this horse is the energy was higher on this horse. The self-preservation was higher. The confidence was lower. Okay, he was scared of me. He wanted to go away from me. Okay, so what happens is, okay, self-preservation, okay, every animal, even people, I teach my bronc riders this too, we have the same chemicals, the same driving factors in us that an animal does, partly. Okay, so we have our sympathetic nervous system, which is our self-preservation, and so does this horse. Okay, so there's an amazing phenomenon here that Dr. Steve Peters and my dad have done, in that when an animal is in their self-preservation, when they fall into their self-preservation, basically I put this horse in a situation that he does not have confidence, okay? That's an underlining factor. He has a lot of energy, okay? I push him up there, okay, and then I let him come down. I push him in his sympathetic nervous system or self-preservation, and then I let him come down and experience that comfort and companionship in me. So when he comes from a sympathetic nervous system, which would be fight, flight, freeze, back down into his parasympathetic nervous system, which is comfort and companionship in me. And here's the key, they lick their lips. When they lick their lips, they produce a chemical called dopamine. It's a feel-good chemical that the body produces. It's like a drug. And if you guys remember, when I started this guy, I'd push him up the pyramid, I'd push him up the pyramid. I took a long time to catch this horse. You guys remember how long I took to catch him? I'd whirl him around there, and as soon as his thought would come to me, he'd stop and pivot around that inside front foot and look to me. I'd give him comfort and companionship. I would reward that, okay? And so I was building dopamine. I was building that trust with this horse, okay? And that's the same thing I'm working on here with him, okay? And so in that, okay, with that self-preservation in there, I just thought that I could gain more with this horse because I had an opportunity to build on that foundation. As I pushed him around there and then let him find me, I had a better opportunity there, okay? This guy, I really, really like, honestly, the little bit of spookiness in him. He fits me to a T. I really like that. I like that life. One of the problems we have with the horse is what I call an unbalanced life to direction ratio, okay? When I'm trying to get that direction, okay, and I don't have the life, this horse has got a lot of life to him, and I really like that about him. He fits me to a T, like I said. This will be interesting as we go through this horse. You can see that energy's still there. He's got a lot of energy. He's actually still got quite a bit of self-preservation related to maybe some other horses. Like I said, we'll kind of see here, and I'm not going to sacrifice, anything on this horse for the obstacle course or whatever, but I like it that he kind of likes to move around and has some energy, and that's easier for me to instill that foundation in on him. Okay, so now that I'm on his back, it's the same thing. Every time I take the slack out of the rein, I'm waiting for one of those revelations. So I take the slack out of the rein, horse puts the slack back in the rein with suppleness through the pole and the loin. I'm always thinking, every time, without exception, whenever I take the slack out of the rein, I'm waiting what foot I want to step. There, that outside hind stepped out, inside hind steps up in between it. Every time I take the slack out of the rein, because I can pull his head, but if it's not tied to a foot, we're not changing directions, right? So I'm going to go over here, we'll go over here, take the slack out of the rein, waiting for a foot. There, outside hind steps out, inside hind steps up in between it. Going this way, wait for him to break in the pull, boom, he breaks in the pull. So I'm constantly thinking I'm a teacher. How good of a teacher am I? It's not my students' fault if they're not understanding. Okay, right here, change his thought. It's not about pulling his head. For me pulling his head around, if I don't have his thought, okay, there, wait, there. How's that vocab word? Did your students know the vocab words, right? I'm a teacher. Does your student know his vocab words? Take the slack out, there, breaking the pull, outside hind steps out, inside hind steps up in between it. Kick him into a lope. We'll do some stage one. Stop that inside front foot. All the other feet pivot around it. We'll see if we can get some stage one to the right here. Kick him into a lope. Okay, little student, refresher. Remember that stage one I taught you a while back? Oh my goodness, you're such a good student. Oh, he's doing good. Okay? And then as soon as I have stage one, I can start teaching the horse to trot or lope circles. As soon as I have that stage one, I take the slack out, it's tied to that inside hind foot. Now I can start trotting and loping circles. But I can't pull that head. If that head's not tied to a hind foot going the other way, I'll pull that head, and what I'll have is a whole lot of resistance. I'll pull the head, and I'm fighting his entire body. Does that make sense, guys? I gotta be aware of all the different parts there. Okay, take the slack out. Oh, this little guy's doing so good. We'll see if we can do some stage two. Okay, using the hind feet to pull the horse in a reverse motion. I'm going to sit and wait there. Using the hind feet to pull the horse in reverse motion. So when I go into stage two, okay, I go stage one, stopping that inside front foot, right into stage two, using the hind feet to pull the horse in reverse motion. Stage one, into stage two, I'm going to wait, I can't force a revelation. I can't do it with my horse. I can't do it with my kids. Oh, come on there, little buddy. There's kind of a step. Good. So now I'll see, now that we kind of did stage one into stage two, I'll just kind of sit and see if I can get just a little bit of stage two here. Take the slack out. It wasn't perfect, but that was pretty good for a little guy. Okay. I might just fart around with this, kind of show you guys how it progresses. So this would be stage three, the front feet and hind feet moving together in a lateral motion. I have my students just use the fence like that. So see, that would be like a side pass. So stage one into stage three, I'm going to use this fence and kind of keep his head at a 45. We'll just kind of go down this fence, kind of do a side pass. We're going to go stage one. Oh, there you go, little buddy. And I really got to be ready with that outside right rein. We're going to go stage one. We'll see if we can keep you going down the fence. Tell my students, keep going down the fence, keep going down the fence. It's kind of confusing for him. There was a step, Because we've been, every time I double him, every time I do that, we do stage 1, right? We double. Okay, now we'll see. Here's what I have my students do. We'll just throw these vocab words together. Let's see if I can get some horizontal direction in a step of stage 4. See if I can get that inside left foot to step over. That was a step. That's the start of a spin or a rollback. Let's see if I can get horizontal direction. See if I can get one step with that right front or that left front. Boom, there's a step. So that's the start of your spin and your rollback. That's how those 4 stages go from one to the other. So it's all about getting a revelation through to the feet.
All right, guys, so that was just kind of a picture of how the vocab words that I was talking about, the horizontal direction in those 4 stages, just how that was applied. That was the third ride on that horse. Of really the backbone of the program is study and research on the science, art, and business of training and selling horses to the public, from foundation to finish to marketing and sales. And so, like I said, that's a huge part of this program, is working with experts in the industry to set industry quality standards for training and selling horses to the public. So that was one of the things I was always amazed. I started helping my dad running his colt starting business, and when I was like 10 years old, we had 30 outside horses, and we did a lot of starting colts. I was always amazed when someone said they had 90 days of professional training. Shoot, sometimes they'd have 90 days of professional training and they wouldn't expect to have what we'd expect at the end of the first week. And so that's part of this, is we try to set industry quality standards and certification. So if I'm the consumer, most people are paying $600 to $800 for a month to train a horse, and most people that are setting the foundation on a horse don't take the horse for less than 2 months. So if I'm the consumer and I'm paying $1,600 to set the foundation, what am I paying for? And so that's what we're trying to work, just like BQA, Beef Quality Assurance, or CHA, that's done an amazing job to try to have some consistency in the training quality. And so the TQA program, we break it down in the 5 different phases of training, of setting the foundation. Groundwork, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. And those are the score sheets that I used in my master's. I put 15 rides on those colts, and I had them all the way through phase 4. For the industry quality standard, I took what I did with my personal horse training business for 1 month, and I expanded that for 2 months for an industry quality standard, and I'll talk more about that. But then you can see the 4 different stages of training: setting the foundation, building the foundation through doing jobs, testing the foundation, and then using and maintaining that foundation to get that solid horse to fill in for the public. And then the last thing is the 4 levels of training. And one of the things, like we said, training and selling horses to the public. So currently there's a huge demand, especially in my area, for performance horse sales, ranch horse sales. But a lot of times there's a lack of consistency. Sometimes people will buy a horse at the building sale and put 3 months on them, shove a bit in their mouth, and say they're a finished bridle horse. So we really try to promote high quality training here, training quality assurance. We're trying to assure our customer that they're getting training quality. So I just kind of break it down in some reasonable kind of time frame as a guideline for my students. So the first one is a started prospect. This usually around a 2 or 3 year old horse. You usually own them for around 3 to 6 months. The training, they'd have 2 or 3 months. Then that price range, we'd try to hit that 5,000 to 8,000. And so, like I said, it's training and selling horses to the public. And so the science, the art, in the business, I try really to help my students. All the students that come to my program, they want to make money training and selling horses. And so I really try to preserve, the Tom Dorrance, Ray Hunt philosophy that I was raised with. And, I grew up with Dad doing the Ed Connell books and that finished bridle horse. Well, shoot, to have a finished bridle horse riding straight up in the spade, you start them at 2 and they're 8, 9 before they're finished, which is great. I love that. But if we're trying to feed a family in selling horses, how do we do that in a reasonable time frame where we're still producing a quality product? But then at the end of the day, if we're trying to feed a family, how can we sell horses and be making money at the process? So the next one would be a solid prospect. This would be continually building on the TQA principles that we've already set. So that would be like a 3 to 5 year old horse. We'd own them for 1 to 2 years. The training in that would be the 5 to 8 months. And the price range would be around that 8,000 to 12,000. And that's if, you're hitting the training trifecta. I tell my students: the task completion, the temperament, and the foundation. The next one would be a seasoned horse. That would be around 5 to 8 years old. You're going to own them for around 2 to 3 years, training them for 8 to 12 months training. The price range would be, you know, 12,000 to 15,000. All these, it could be more, you know what I mean, and selling them. I'm just trying to give students a guideline if they're following the TQA program and using the TQA score sheets. And big part of all this is I like to train a horse and then turn them out a little bit. There's a lot of overlap in my program between training horses and then working on ranches and doing day work. And so it works good. You set the foundation, and then, you know, you're filling in, you're going and doing a job on this horse. And it's a lot easier to keep a horse longer, like I said, if you're doing day work or if you're working on a ranch where they're feeding your horse part of the time, you know, and so you don't have that expense. The last one's the babysitters and old campaigners. You know, that'd be around that 8 to 15 years old or older. You're going to own them for 3 to 5 years. The time would be 24 months training, and the price range would be $15,000 to $30,000, depending how solid they are. And so here's just some guidelines that I give my students in selling horses to try to keep the training quality, but then again, to help them hit their target market. So here's the score sheets. I realize it's a little bit small, but it'll kind of give you an idea of how the TQA program works and how the score sheets are designed. Like I said, I break it down into different phases. There's 4 different phases. These are the actual score sheets that I did with my masters. You can see on the left side of the score sheets, on the far left there, we have groundwork. So there's task completion and foundation. So there's different things. There's 8 different things on every score sheet that we're tracking. So like we have good to catch, stage 1 with willing submission, end in a crisis, horizontal direction, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, lead with willing submission, and pick up feet. So that's my groundwork. It's not just about getting them gentle. I'm instilling that foundation to ultimately go do a reining pattern or turn with the cow. Those are those same vocab words. Then you can see I jump clear to phase 4. It's those same vocab words that I've taken all the way through, as far as loping circles, you know, rollback, spins, you know, that vertical flexion at a walk, trot, lope, basically just that reining cow horse foundation. And then you can see on the right side, there's the temperament. So we have things like self-preservation, confidence, energy, willingness, reaction to social separation, sensitivity. And so you will mark it on that side as well, depending on where your horse is. So where a lot of people have problems is they try to do task completions. They're trying to get him caught and saddled. When the self-preservation is super high, the confidence low, they have high energy. So my grandpa, my dad, they naturally had these score sheets in their head. They naturally knew to get the energy down and the work on the foundation before they tried to accomplish things on the task completion side. And so that's what I really have tried to do, is bring a scientific component, like I said, of what I thought I saw my dad and grandpa do. So here's a riding log that I have all my students fill out. You can see at the top, there's the owner name, the info, the arrival date, departure date. You know, one thing, the payment method, amount. If you have a bunch of horses, sometimes owners like to pay it all at the beginning, sometimes at the end. And then you have the horse's name, and you could put other things in there. But you can see every day you fill out a riding log. So you circle what phase you're in. So I'd say I'd circle that. We're doing the groundwork. And then you can see a 1 on the foundation task completion, and that correlates with the 1 over there, good to catch. So on day 1, you know, I'd start him and say good to catch. So on that one, maybe the first day it took a long time to catch him, wasn't very good to catch. Maybe I'd give him a -2 or even a -3 on good to catch. And then you go just right down the list on all those. On the other side's the temperament. So number 1 on that side would be self-preservation. Where was his self-preservation on day 1? Okay, so maybe he had really high self-preservation. You know, I'd give him a -3 on self-preservation. Well, then every day I'm tracking him. The temperament should get better if I'm doing my job as a good quality trainer. I'm working on the temperament, and then you'll see the task completions. I also have comments here that you can write there every day. I have the students write a comment. You know, maybe sometimes they're stiffer to the left or to the right, high energy, maybe they bucked. So these are the score sheets that I have my students fill out. And then a huge part of TQA is the client education. At the end of every training period, the student sits down with their client, and they, you know, like I try to tell them, just like I'd go into a parent teacher conference and they sit me down and they say, my son's Teo, here's how Teo did, here's how he scored in math and reading and work well and play with others or whatever. There's a score. So this is a scoring system that the trainer could sit down with the owner and let their horse know how they're doing according to the TQA program. So they could say things according to TQA. At the end of 2 months training, this is where they should be. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that every horse is going to fit it, but at least it gives you a guide to say, you know, most horses should be here, you know, and then you could sit down with the client and go, you know, maybe this is a tougher horse. How much more money do you want to put in with them? And you can just have that conversation with them. Then the next thing we have, I talked about the foundation to finish score sheets. So the first sets of score sheets have to do with that $600 to $800 for setting the foundation on that horse. The next one's now taking that horse to go market and sell him. So you can see here, same thing. There's the foundation warm-up, which is just that reining cow horse foundation that we're building on. Again, it has the temperament. But then over here, there's the task completions. And so within the TQA program, I have different competitions, and I'll talk about them in a little bit, but it has phases. So like say reining, there's phase 1, 2, 3, 4. We have competitions that we host for youth development. And the design of this is to help kids understand. So you can see the TQA reining, fence work. I have ranch roping competitions. A lot of my students go on to work on feedlots. So we have different feedlot competitions that teach them the skills that they'll need if they get hired working on a feedlot. And then I even have rodeo competitions. I have heading, heeling, breakaway, calf roping, and I even have a barrel competition. But I break it down in the different phases, just like in starting a colt. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So if I'm going to say do a barrel horse, say one of my students wants to make and sell barrel horses, it's the same foundation that you instill on that horse, and building the confidence in phase 1 barrels, which would be trotting correctly around the barrels, and on with all the different events there. And again, you can see up here, so I have in the sell horse score sheets, you can see the horse, the owner, whether it's you. I partner with a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, one group of people, the Harrington and Hershey's, they have really good horses. I help promote their horses, so they own the horse, and then I ride them for 2 or 3 years and sell them. The purchase price, how much money you have into them. The target market, what's your target market? What are you trying to hit? Are you trying to hit that solid prospect, that seasoned horse? The sale, what's your sale? What's your sell date? And so it really gives you these. The purpose of TQA is to help you reach your goals. And so that helps you outline it. One of the things that's tricky, especially when it's your own horse, is you don't put the quality riding in it. So this helps the kids sit down. They say, okay, I'm taking this horse to the Van Norman horse sale next spring. So then I know I can start riding him. I'll work through, like say Van Norman's, I have to, I'll do a reining pattern. I'll box a cow, take it down the fence, rope it. There'll be a ranch roping, and there's a team roping. Okay, so I know that's ultimately where I need to take that horse. Well, I'll start, on all these phase 1s. I'll start building that foundation. So when I get to the horse sale, he's through phase 4, and he has a solid foundation in the areas that I need to go perform on. The other thing, I've broken all these down, again, following the same TQA format with the different phases. Like here's the ranch roping. In the ranch roping, it's not just horsemanship, it's horsemanship, stockmanship, roping, teamwork, and time. So you can see here in the phase 4, we have ranch roping competitions, and the focus on there isn't so much throwing fancy shots. It's really, at the end of the day, if these are my cows, who would I want to heel to be safe, to be efficient, to get the job done? And as you can see here, I have the same vocab words: willing submission, vertical direction, the 4 stages. I also go into defining stockmanship. You can see the definition of stockmanship: flight zone, pressure zone. So that's what these, my students are learning. But even in the youth development program that starts at kindergarten, I start teaching my kids this. So not only do they learn the skills, not only is it a family business, but the purpose of the whole TQA program is to release these kids out in the industry to go work for horse trainers, go work selling horses, or to go get a job on a ranch. I visit with people all the time working on ranches, and it's hard to find kids that have these skills. So that's the focus of the TQA program, is teaching them there. So like I said, here's the groundwork. It's pretty basic, phase 2, and then it goes right in the ranch roping. Here's one on fence work. So again, we start them out with the cut and flag, rope and the dummy. Most all the stuff that we do, it starts out with dummies, and it's pretty basic. Then we have the phase 4 fence work. You can see the scoring system here. So these would be the TQA sell horse score sheets. So we have it like a competition. We score it, we get prizes, but it's really helping these horses get ready to market and sell. Here's the feedlot. You can see the phase 1 and phase 4. Again, it follows the TQA format where everything has 4 phases, starting pretty basic and then getting more advanced. And so, like I said, it's a youth development program, but the big part is at the end, these kids grow up doing it, and then they can go out, make money in the industry, either training or selling horses or doing day work. So the certifications, the TQA certifications that I offer through the program, one of them is a colt starting certification. And so right here, the kids start the colts at TVCC. They need to score an 85% or better. The judges that score it, I have Chris Cox, Nick Dowers, Martin Black, and Ty Van Norman. We film it and then we send it to them. There's a scoring format that I really kind of worked with Road to the Horse and used part of that. But there's 25% on task completions, 25% on foundation, 25% on temperament, 12.5% on the client education interaction, and then 12.5% on the horse health and welfare. And so that's housed at TVCC. They have 3 months to get 2 months training on it, basically. That leaves some time in case a horse gets lame or they get kind of sick. They can get it within that time frame. Here's the 15 main task completions according to TQA that I try to set that where a horse should be at the end of 2 months. Like I said, according to TQA and what I try to teach, this isn't necessarily saying everyone has to do this. This is just the training quality standards that I've set through TQA, and I teach the students through my program. So good to catch, stand to saddle and accept bridle, stand to get on for an inexperienced horse owner. Here's one of my biggest pet peeves: lope in a straight line away from the barn. Walk, trot, and lope a circle both directions. Stop at a walk, trot, and lope by asking with both reins. Pivot around an inside front foot, so that'd be that stage 1. Use the hindquarters to pull the horse in reverse motion for stopping and backing. Front feet and hind feet move together in a lateral motion. That'd be like your side pass or your 2-track. Stop in the inside hind foot, walk and pull the other feet forward around it. That'd be like your roll back or spin. Again, those are the 4 stages, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, that we instill in groundwork, and we build all the way through it. Vertical flexion, or breaking in the pull vertically. Pick up feet, load in a trailer. Another thing is stand quiet, tied up. I like a horse, I can just tie them up quiet and they stand quiet. And the next one is a foundation applied to jobs. So whatever that is, some kids may want to go on and they really want to target the trail horse. Some of them are reining cow horse. Some of them, do more of the ranch roping. And some of the kids, they want barrel horses, calf horses, breakaway. And so I encourage them to use some of the TQA. They have a freestyle and they could come out of the box and rope a dummy coming out of the box. And big part of this is helping kids train the horses to go sell to the public, whatever type of horse they're trying to sell and whatever public they're trying to reach the customer. Then I have day work and ranch horse sales. So these are the other certifications. We have reining, fence work, feedlot, herd handling, stock dog, and then the ranch roping. And again, all those have 4 different phases. Again, with the TQA format, we break it down. We have score sheets. I have videos. The huge part of this is on the education. What's the education to build a solid foundation, obviously with the horses, but then with the kids or beginners. And a big part of this, we really include the parents, have the parents get involved. And then the last one, the rodeo horse sales. We have team roping, heading and heeling, team roping, heading and heeling, breakaway, calf roping, and barrels. Again, 4 phases on all those. There's the score sheets, there's the videos. And like I said, some of that's really basic. Like on the barrels, it's just walking and trotting around the barrels, doing correct. The phase 4 would be the rodeo run. And all of those, heading, heeling, breakaway, calf roping, phase 4, that's the rodeo run. I help out quite a bit at rodeo Bible camps. A lot of times we have kids that are trying to do a phase 4, doing a dead run coming out of the box, and they couldn't back a horse quiet in the box and do it correct, tracking a dummy at a walk or a slow trot. And so that's where it starts. We use the AQHA heading, heeling score sheets. We score them on that, but we're scoring them just at a walk or a slow trot into a lope, just roping a dummy coming out of the box, and they get scored on that. And a big part of that is I try to reward these kids for doing it correct. So much of rodeo and even on the ranch, it's trying to do it fast, try to slow them down, teach them to be efficient in what they're doing. So really the industry certifications, really what I try to help kids do in training horses for the public is that $600 to $800 per month per horse. Currently, there's no industry quality standard. If I'm the consumer and I am paying someone $600 to $800 to train my horse, there's no industry quality standard that says what I should expect. And sadly, there's a lot of people that are not really qualified to train horses. They try to accomplish the task completions. They don't work on the foundation. They don't get the temperament in order. And you have one chance to make a first impression. So they try to saddle a horse before they're ready. They try to catch the horse before they're ready. They blow the horse up, and then they call the horse owner and they say, well, your horse is no good. No, you needed a qualified horse trainer training your horse, and they could have helped him work through those problems. The next thing is selling horses to the public. So like I said, that 75 to 20,000, and it could be more than that. But just selling a horse, getting them ready for some form of a performance horse sale. There's an amazing market for a horse with enough confidence to fill in for an inexperienced horse owner. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it's a trail horse, a pleasure horse, a ranch horse, a rodeo horse, a reining cow horse. And so that's what I try to do, is using the TQA format, setting the foundation, going through those different phases to have a solid horse that can fill in for an inexperienced horse owner. Currently, there's 7.1 million people in the equine industry, and 85 to 90% are inexperienced horse owners. That's really the focus of my program, is equipping that 10% to go train and sell, to give a high quality product with consistency to that 85 to 90% that are seeking that. The next one is day work, and so potentially earn $100 to $150 per day. And that could be if you're just strictly hired on for day work, or it could be obviously if you're working on a ranch and it's those same skills, working on a ranch where horsemanship, stockmanship, and roping skills are required. And I'll just give you a quick little an example here. One winter I worked for Simplot, and they were paying me $2,000 a month. I was calving heifers. They were giving me a place to live, and I was eating at the cookhouse, and I was on their insurance. And so I was making $2,000 with all expenses paid, and they allowed me to keep 4 horses there. And all 4 of those were outside horses that I had went through the TQA program. One of them I just had a month or 2 month on, but I used my horsemanship and stockmanship skills and the foundation that I instilled that I could still get the job done on. And so I had 4 outside horses, and then I was charging $700. Now I would have been charging $800. So that was $3,200 on top of the $2,000 that I was making. And so that's what I really try to help. There's such a market for good quality horses. We could use these horses on the ranch. That's part of TQA's teaching these kids how to incorporate an equine business into their cattle business. A 4-wheeler is just going to depreciate in value. Bringing them in the crells, using a chute for everything. There's a lot of that stuff that you could do out in the pasture, and you can train a horse in the process and have fun with your kids. So that's where this comes in, the TQA Youth Development Program, all about having fun with their kids, having parents have fun with their kids. There's some 4-H programs. Currently, I work with the Malheur County Started Ranch Colt Project, the TQA Youth Colt Starting. The other thing, we have Waihe County Ranch Horse. We work with them, give them some of these score sheets to use in those. And then another one is the Working Ranch Horse Project here in the Valley too. Part of TQA is we host 6 shows a year. There's 3 that are focused on parents and kids, and then there's 3 that are focused on the industry certification. So we host those at TVCC, and this is an opportunity for students. And I have hybrid online classes that people could take an online class and then just show up for a 3-day clinic and earn these certifications. And a huge part of the certifications, especially, some of the kids might want to go on to get a job doing it, but the other part is really helping parents learn how to teach their kids. And really my kids are starting to rodeo, and I'm going to take my kids, my horses that I have, they're going to start calf roping and breakaway. And so I'm going to create these horses for them. Phase 1, 2, 3, 4 calf roping. Well, I rode broncs and team roped in college. I didn't calf rope, but I'm looking forward to work with experts in the industry, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, to help break it down, to take this horse through the program that as a parent, I can have this horse ready for my kid. And I feel like there's a real lack of teaching on that, helping parents train their horses to equip them for their kids. Anyway, and I feel like part of it, we give buckles, we give prizes to really reward kids for doing it correct. And that's the thing. So much with rodeo or even showing, sometimes it's all about going fast instead of seeing how slow and correct. And through the entire program, we're always instilling those vocab words. Okay. Another time is the family time. The business and the sport. Currently right now, we have a family business. All 3 of my kids, we go do day work. We run some cows. All 3 of my kids, that's part of the TQA Sell Horse series, equips them. They ride my horses through the cell. It's a fun family atmosphere. And, as we're thinking, as you're running cows and as you're doing different things, thinking how we can cut and save. And, part of the low stress livestock handling is that saves us money when we're running our cows. But how do you put a value on spending time with your kids? And I think that's hard to. And the other thing, the scholarship component, Kids grow up in this program. There's a lot of overlap in, if you do own a ranch or if you do have cows, taking your kids out there, incorporating some of these principles that I teach, where kids can learn these rodeo skills, they can learn the stock horse skills in a family business tied to a sport that can lead to scholarships. Just an example, I got a $60,000 college education paid for free because I had a rodeo scholarship. And so that's part of this is all the craziness of the world and everything, is really promoting the family time with the family business in a family sport that they could all do together. Like I said, I really encourage, when I have these youth development opportunities, the parents to bring a horse. They enter the show, they pay a fee, and the fee goes the year-end prizes for the parents. It's all about the kids.